Today we're going to talk about DBFZ's most notorious mechanic, the Superdash. Love it or hate it, Superdash is one of the cornerstones of Dragon Ball FighterZ. And I thought that Season 4 would be the perfect time to do a bit of a refresher on how to best deal with Superdash outside of the usual 2H. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. If you've played this game at all, you know the basics of what Superdash is and what it does. It's essentially a homing attack with fast startup and incredible tracking. How fast is Superdash exactly? Well, that depends on you. At point blank range, Superdash starts up in 21 frames. Which is actually pretty fast. So fast, in fact, that at high level, players often use this as a mix-up. However, it's important to note that the further you are from the opponent, the longer Superdash must travel. So at full screen, Superdash takes roughly 34 frames to complete. Much easier to react to. This is why it's always important to consider what zone you are in when choosing your option. For those that don't know, zones are the different areas of the screen relative to your distance from the opponent. Generally, DBFZ has 3 zones. Zone 1 is usually where you use quick pokes and block strings to try to open up your opponent. Superdash is at its most dangerous here. Zone 2 is where you would use mid-range pokes to try to close the gap between you and your opponent. Superdash is manageable here, but still sometimes problematic. And Zone 3 is where you would usually use long-range tools to attempt to fish for hits. Superdash is at its least dangerous here, but most of the game tends to happen in zones 1 and 2. But even though it may be difficult to land at certain ranges, why not just 2H all the time? As we all know, the premier way of stopping a Superdash is by 2Hing it. But believe it or not, this isn't always necessarily the best option. This is due to the fact that most 2Hs are not invincible to air attacks until their 4th frame. This is why you often hear people say, "Oh man, I 2H that." This can make it feel as though you have to sit still and wait for a Superdash rather than play the game, which can add a lot of weight onto your mental stacks. In fighting games, there's a concept known as mental stacks. This is the idea that while fighting an opponent, your brain can only process so many ideas at once. A simple example would be, an opponent has just hit you with a level 3. You're getting off the ground, and suddenly you have to consider, where's their attack going to come from next? High, low, overhead, cross-up, fake cross-up? As your brain tries to process all these different possibilities, your opponent opts to simply throw you, and it most likely connects. Is a Dragon Rush impossible to react to? No, not at all. But in that moment, you had so many options to consider that something that's usually reactable became hard to spot at all. This is the idea of mental stacks in a nutshell. So all 4 options we're about to cover are not only designed to help you deal with Superdash more easily, but also designed to help you lighten the load on your mental stacks. The first and most easy to demonstrate option is the Reflect. Reflect is another one of the game's most powerful tools by far, and it's good for much more than just block strings or getting up off the ground. The biggest benefit to Reflect is that it activates in 1 frame. This means that even if you react at the last possible moment, you're still likely to negate. There's also the added bonus of having to hold back in order to activate a Reflect, which means that if you do react late, you'll simply block. While you don't get the same return on investment with a Reflect as you do with a 2H, you do get the benefit of negating the threat while taking little risk. And because the option is so easy, it leaves you open to consider other aspects of the match. The next anti-Superdash option I'd like to cover briefly is the Momentum Jump. Momentum Jump, for those that don't know, is the act of dashing on the ground and then jumping immediately. This allows you to add grounded momentum to your jumps, carrying you great distances very quickly. Why is this good against Superdash? One simple reason. You can block while advancing forward. In most fighting games, it's impossible to move toward your opponent while blocking at the same time. However, in this game, thanks to momentum jumps, you can cover great distances while remaining perfectly safe. In a situation where you're unsure if your opponent is going to Superdash or not, but you still want to apply pressure safely, try using momentum jumps. Option number 3 is the Super Jump Float. One of the big changes in Season 4 was to give players more opportunities to float. This includes holding S while jumping or after performing certain special moves, as well as hitting up after holding the dash macro. While floating, you're able to avoid most assists while also creating a lot of distance between you and your opponent. In most cases, this will give you plenty of room to react to an incoming Super Dash. In the Season 4 patch, many characters received buffs to their jump lights. This is meant to be combined with a float in order to tag incoming Super Dash. The only true weakness to Super Dash is that it has an incredibly large hurt box. This makes it highly susceptible to air buttons. Keep in mind, however, how easy this is to perform varies character by character. Some characters have godlike jump lights that will almost never lose to Super Dash, while others have jump lights that need to be timed very specifically. This is an option I would recommend practicing quite a bit in training mode with each member on your team before taking it online. And on the subject of character specifics, if your character has access to an anti-air attack while jumping, then baiting with float becomes even more reliable. The last option we're going to cover is the most situational of the four, but still well worth mentioning. When you find yourself relatively close to an airborne opponent, try dashing without letting go forward. In many cases, this sudden movement may bait your opponent into super dashing, which will then make Super Dash's built-in tracking work in your favor. Due to the fact that Super Dash must follow you no matter what, this gives you plenty of time and distance to get a 2H. And thanks to the way cross-up protection works in this game, from the moment you cross under the opponent, you are considered to be blocking. While again, this is a very situational option, it is one that you should definitely use from time to time. Now that we've covered all four options, I'd like to quickly go over which option is most effective in which zone. For Zone 1, I would recommend using Reflect, as well as the Run Under. Keep in mind, however, that Reflect is good from all zones. For Zone 2, I would recommend Momentum Jumps, as well as Super Jump Float. And from Zone 3, I would recommend the good old-fashioned 2H, as well as Super Jump Float. And with that, we've covered how to best handle Super Dash in Season 4. As usual, I hope you found this information helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.